Let's talk about pricing. When you're starting a short-term rental, getting the price right is one of the absolute biggest and easiest things to mess up. Honestly, nailing your pricing strategy can be the difference between a business that just hums along beautifully and one that's a constant, unprofitable headache. So let's break down how to get it right from the beginning. And this, right here, is the classic tightrope walk every new host has to face. If you price too high, crickets. You're just staring at a totally empty calendar, making zero revenue. But if you price too low, sure, you get the bookings, but you're leaving so much money on the table that your business is barely staying afloat. It's a really tricky balancing act. You know, the first thing you really need to get is that pricing is your most powerful lever. It's so much more than just a number you pick so you can get paid. Think of it as a strategic tool that literally shapes your entire business. Your pricing decision has this incredible ripple effect. I mean, of course, it directly impacts your bookings and how often you're occupied, but it also dictates the kind of guest you attract. It sends a signal about your property's value. It positions you against your competitors. And yeah, it ultimately decides the financial health of your rental. Okay, so because pricing is so important, it's super easy for new hosts to fall into a few common traps. These are the approaches that, they might seem logical at first glance, but they can really hurt your performance in the long run. Let's look at what you need to avoid. So the first trap, pricing with your heart. Look, you've poured your time, your money, your sweat into making this property amazing. It's totally natural to want to slap a high price on it to reflect all that personal investment. But here's the hard truth. Guests don't pay for your feelings. They pay for the value they think you're getting. All right, trap number 2 is the good old copy-paste method. It feels so easy, right? Just find a similar looking place nearby and match their price. But oh man, this is incredibly risky. Is their property really the same? Do they have way better reviews, different amenities, maybe professional photos? When you just blindly copy a price, you're also copying their strategy, and you have absolutely no idea if that strategy is even working for them. And the third trap is the race to the bottom. The logic here is that a lower price is the safest, fastest way to get those crucial first few bookings. But pricing too cheaply can totally devalue your property in the eyes of guests, it can attract the wrong kind of crowd, and it makes it really, really hard to raise your rates to a profitable level later on. So if we're avoiding all those traps, what's the right way to even start? Well, it all begins with a little shift in your mindset, moving away from emotion and guesswork and toward a logical, value-based approach. This, right here, is how you start pricing your property like a pro. This is the new way you need to be thinking. So instead of just guessing, you start asking these strategic questions. What's the real, actual value a guest gets from staying at my property? What's the demand like in my area? How do weekends, seasons, or big local events change that demand? And this is the big one. What's the right balance between getting booked and actually getting paid well for it? And that brings us to a really key concept. A single, fixed, set-it-and-forget-it price almost never works in the world of short-term rentals. Guest demand is not static. It's always changing, and your pricing needs to be flexible enough to change right along with it. Let's use a super simple example. Imagine a city apartment. It might see a higher demand and be able to charge better rates for business travelers during the week. But come the weekend, that demand might totally shift to vacationers looking for a getaway, and they might have a completely different budget. See? 2 different kinds of demand. And that means you need 2 different pricing strategies. And this logic expands way, way further. A beach house is obviously in peak demand in the summer and has way lower demand in the winter. A place near a convention center is going to see a huge surge during a big event. So the right question isn't what is my one price, it's how should my price adapt to all these different demand patterns? Which leads us to the real end game of smart pricing. It's not just about being booked 100% of the time, and it's not about having the highest nightly rate in town either. The true goal is to find the most profitable balance between the two. Look at it this way. An aggressive, really high rate might just scare guests away, which means you'll have low occupancy and, well, only moderate revenue. On the flip side, a big discount might keep you busy, but your profit margins are so thin that you guessed it, also see moderate revenue. The sweet spot is that balanced rate in the middle. The price that gets you strong occupancy and leads to the highest possible overall revenue. That's the bullseye you're aiming for. So, from now on, frame your goal with this question. This is the mindset of a professional operator. You're not just picking a number out of thin air, you're using price as a tool to engineer the absolute best outcome for your business. Okay, I know what you're thinking. This all sounds great, but how do I actually do it? Well, the good news is you don't need some complex software or a PhD in economics on day one. All you need is a simple, logical structure to build from. Here's a practical 5-step structure to get you started today. First, set a base rate for your weekdays. Second, set a slightly higher rate for your weekends. Third, go through the calendar, identify the holidays or peak seasons, and price those higher. Fourth, have a flexible plan for your slow season. And finally, and this is the most important part, just observe what happens. Let your real booking data tell you what's working and keep refining your strategy over time. And that's really the core philosophy to take away from all this. Strong pricing isn't about luck or just guessing. It's a skill, and it's a skill you build through a very deliberate process that's grounded in the value you offer, the demand you face, and your own clear business goals. So if we boil everything we've talked about down to one single idea, this is it. Strong beginner pricing is simply using your understanding of your property's value, the demand from guests, and the timing of it all to set your rates with logic and never with emotion. It's really just about being intentional. And that leads me to my final question for you. Take a hard look at your own pricing strategy or the one you're planning to build. Are you truly pricing based on real value and demand? Or are you maybe falling into one of those traps of guessing, copying, or just reacting emotionally? Answering that question honestly, well, that's the very first step toward building a much stronger, more profitable rental business.